Viktor Dvoskin on the phone right now. Viktor, welcome to WPFW. We were connecting you to the Tabard Inn from your journey here from what was in the Soviet Union. Why don't we start at the beginning and ask you, how did you start playing the bass while you were living in your homeland?
Well, my homeland first, it was, I was born in Ukraine and I grew up there. That's where I began actually hooking up with musicians who, most of them, they were much older than me. So I played knob accordion. That was a very popular instrument there. And then I picked up guitar. And the problem was the tuning on guitars in probably also the tuning era, that was mostly different. It's not like six-string tuning here, and I didn't know how to tune guitar.
Oh, wow, okay.
So that was a very interesting story. Then, so there was a guy, and that was like an amateur circle of musicians. This club belonged to the factory where my father actually was. It was free. You just go there and join the orchestra or small ensembles, whatever. And there was a guy who was much older than me and had this Czechoslovakian guitar, a real six-string guitar, and he knew how to tune it. So I was following him, and he was just so weird. He didn't tell me how to tune guitar for a long time until I met another guy who knew that, and then I just began to pick up those chords myself because, you know, this knob accordion, it has a circle of fifth in your left hand. Mm-hmm. So I already kind of knew a little bit about harmony, so I was trying to put my fingers on fingerboard myself. That was horrible experience, but it worked somehow. Then eventually, later on, I was playing again with the guys who were much older than me. I was about probably 13 years old. I was a big boy, and the bass player was drafted into the army, and so the leader approached me, and he was a trombonist, but he always smelled alcohol. He approached me and said, "You will play bass." I said, "No, I will never play bass. I will play guitar." And he said, "You will play bass, I'll kill you right now." And he just moved his face so close to mine. I understood there's no joke.
I guess not.
So I picked up bass, and that was it. Actually.
That was it. Did you get any classical training along the way?
That was much later.
Okay.
My dream was always to actually study. You know, I wanted to study all my life, all my youth, and there was no way I could do something in there. But what happened actually, again, it's just, you know, just accidentally. Everything is just like accident in my life. Mm-hmm. The guys who were traveling on the road, playing a little bit of jazz, but mostly accompany singers, you know, variety music or something like that. So two of them, and specifically a drummer, was based in that same town, Dnipro, where I was born and where I was growing up. So they came on a summer vacation, and they heard me playing somewhere there. I don't remember where was it actually. So, and the bass player there was a friend of mine. He was also much older. His name was Valery Kuczynski, and later he actually played with the famous orchestra in Soviet Union. By I'll tell you the name of it later. So. What happened, this guy was leaving, and they offered me a job to go on the road. Oleg Lundström, that was the orchestra, quite famous later in the Soviet Union. So in any way, they offered me the job. So I just abandoned everything. I was 18 years old. I took the train, and I went on the road. Uh-huh. So we began approximately in the same time like you began your radio shows, and I began my music life as a professional musician.
And so, while you were living in the Soviet Union, how were you listening to jazz? Were you able to pick up the Voice of America while you were there?
Voice of America was a problem because what happens there, Willis Conover was on the radio at 11:15 by that time, and at 12 there usually were news in Russian, and that was Voice of America news. So because of Cold War never actually stopped, so they were jamming this station all the time. And the problem is that probably because they were afraid to miss the jamming, they turned those machines much earlier than midnight. So Willis Conover practically almost always was going through this jamming. It was completely like a noise, very loud noise. And but we all had shortwave radios, so you're trying to turn the dial a little bit, left to right. So cymbal is on the left, the bass is on the right, but you cannot hear both of those. It was amazing. And anyway, still people were, transcribing, recording this and transcribing things with all those noises. I don't know how they did it, but I knew, and I kind of experienced. People were able to transcribe even big band scores. Yeah.
Did you get introduced to much jazz through all of that jamming?
That was the beginning. That was the only source. When I was in Ukraine, that was the only source. Later on, I got acquainted to one guy whose father worked for the some trade organization in the government. So he was traveling abroad, and that was the only source. So once he goes on his business trip, he goes abroad somewhere. So his son Yuri asked, "Bring me this record, Thelonius Monk, whatever name it." So one record comes maybe once 2-3 months, and then we gather all together, like all local musicians. We go to this guy's apartment and we lie on the floor because there's so many of us, and he just, cherish. He takes out this LP and just wipes it with a special wiper and puts it on a player, and so we listen to Thelonius Monk. And we pretend that we understand something. It was amazing experience to see, to hear those things you heard a little bit through Willis Conover. Now you can touch this record, which came from the United States. That was something. It was a lot.
It must have been really, really revealing. Now you came to the States in the early 1980s. There were a lot of exchanges going on, and how did you make that decision to come here?
Well, I came as a cultural exchange, and Fritz Cohen was actually I think that was her idea to create this group of people. She put together a group of people who probably had some connections, maybe with the government, but a little bit of money, and they decided that she was a liberal woman. Well, I say was because she passed away last year, and so her idea was to establish cultural roots between capitals. So it was sister capital exchange between Moscow and Washington D.C. And I already was based in Moscow because that was everybody was trying to be there, like it's New York here, And so again, by accident, I was invited to be part of the quartet. Plus, we had this Alexei Batashov, who was a writer and a jazz, personality.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so 5 of us.
I remember I met Alexei, and he, in fact, gave a talk at my jazz history class at American University.
Yeah, I'm sure. Yes, he did.
Yeah.
I think I saw him. I saw his face on one of the pictures on your bio.
Right.
And so we came here, and that was my first time. It was an amazing trip, amazing. We were getting up like 7 o'clock every morning and going to different places, meeting students and in Russian departments at universities, and playing jam sessions with different musicians. And Fritz used to tell me, Victor, we rented 10 basses for you. Different places. And it was an amazing trip. It was a month trip, and I was first time introduced to America, you know. But then I was coming here many times before I decided to try to live here.
And how did that work out in terms of your making the transition to live here permanently?
Yeah, transition was not easy. You see, Rusty, I was already 45 years old. That was that was really kind of late to. Well, you know what I mean.
Sure.
I'm already established, and I was married, and so all the things. But you said it was 93. First of all, you have to realize that Soviet Union collapsed.
Right.
And though I was with a group which was very successful, one of the best groups in Soviet Union, we traveled all over. We traveled all European jazz festivals. Everything was just, all the doors were open for us. But after system collapsed, everything collapsed. So actually, even though I left already this group on my own accord, and I was playing with another piano player, a very famous guy, was unbelievable. He's alive. He's in Germany. But there was no work, practically. And I remember I was on a balcony. The apartment building was about, probably 20 kilometers from downtown Moscow. And there were some shootings in the parliament building. If you know that history, maybe a little bit. There was some friction between Yeltsin and other guys.
Sure.
So, and first time I heard pop, 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 pop. I heard like you know, gun machine working somewhere there. It was really strange feeling. I never ever was experienced anything like that in my life. And and I had already booked my trip to here to United States because guys whom I met, Louis Scherr and Tommy Cecil and Toni Martucci, I already knew them.
Right.
So they wanted to record the record. So I was going here in October of 93, and the biggest scare was that actually they closed the airport, and I will never ever actually fly out of here. It could have happened, but it did not.
Okay.
So again, it did not happen. And so it's all kind of, all my life, it's something just, it's accidents. Accidentally, I was lucky. I came here, and it was great record. And Louis Scherr, he's perfectionist, you know. He tried to do everything perfect.
Absolutely.
So, perfect. Everything is perfect. So we recording, that's where we're recording, and was delaying something, and instead of being here for a month, it was like really 3 months. And because I had this work visa, work permit, practically. So Tommy Cecil and others, and Robert Trett, whom I met and here already, and they just hooked me up with a couple of musicians, local musicians. So I began to gig here.
Absolutely.
Everything is nothing was planned, actually.
Right. No, okay.
Never planned it. It just happened. It just happened.
So
from
you
that
already,
moment, actually,
you already knew Fritzie Cohen, so she was the co-owner of that, the Tabard Inn.
She was actually majorly she was the owner.
Okay.
Because they shared the ownership with people who worked there.
Okay.
But
wow.
But she had the most amount of stocks, and her voice was the main voice.
And you have been consistently there for how many years now?
The job was offered to me later. I think I began in 97.
Wow. Okay.
So I already was in the United States 4 years. My wife came here, and I rented an apartment, and I was working as other guys, you know. There were a couple of gigs they asked me to play there. I don't remember. It was private parties, I think something like that. And somebody I think one of her sons offered, why, Victor, you gonna play here? Just have a gig here. I said, no, just too small. I said, it's just too small.
Yes.
There's no place here. And somehow they convinced me. There were a couple other people, friends of mine, who said, no, you have to take the gig. they knew how hard to get the gig, but I still didn't know that. I still was spoiled with traveling abroad. Being on the road.
Mm-hmm.
But it was. They were right. Actually, I began once every 2 weeks, I think, with Paul Bollenberg. But this guy is a monster musician. Was
absolutely
he was amazing. He was so amazing. He was so good to me, and so I miss him a lot. And later on, I already knew Paul Piper, so everything began already, and you know the process, how that works.
Absolutely. Have you been teaching? Have you been doing other?
Actually, yes. Everything came to me. I never considered myself a teacher, though my education in Moscow was I'm partially performer and partially teacher. So this college was called pedagogical. So kind of you learn pedagogy, and so the first call came from VCU.
Yes.
And that was 97 also.
Mm-hmm.
So I began actually at Aberdeen Aberdeen was in the spring, and in the autumn I began VCU. Everything happened in 1 year. And in several months, Towson called me. Also offered me position. So eventually I was teaching in 2 colleges, and from that moment I was very, very busy.
Well, you really got well established here then. So this coming Monday, you're participating in a forum and celebration of Willis Conover, and along with you will be the Voice of America audio specialist Jimmy Cook. The host is Jim Dandridge, who's really connected with the Dacor Bacon House, and Burnett Thompson will be part of the festivities also. In celebration of Willis Conover, who I got to know and meet and talk with. In fact, he's been very helpful to me in terms of when I was doing some jazz history about Washington, D.C. for the National Geographic. So I did have some extensive conversations with him. So it should be a fun evening. The Dacor Bacon House is at 1801 F Street. It's affiliated with the Foreign Service of the State Department. I don't know the exact connection, but it's a nice location. The house is beautiful. They got some great piano, and Burnett Thompson has hooked all this up, so it should be a lot of fun.
Will you be there, Rusty?
I will definitely be there. I'm going to be talking a little bit also. They've added me to the panel, so I'm going to certainly make it and converse with you and Burnett and Jimmy and Jim Dandridge. Looking forward to it. So I'm going to have to play some more of your music to conclude our interview. So I picked up how about yesterday's with Paul Bollenbach.
Sure.
Paul has been doing very well since he moved out of the city and lived up in New York, and I catch up with him a lot whenever he's playing somewhere. So what do you have coming up at the Tabard, and who'll be playing with you in the upcoming weeks?
This week is going to be Steve Herbert on guitar. Yes.
Okay. Wow. And this will be consistently ongoing, even though we're continuing the music past our retirement age, aren't we?
Yes.
Since we are about the same age. Well, Victor, I'm looking forward to seeing you on Monday at the Dacor Bacon House, and we'll listen to some more of your music. Thanks for calling in tonight and telling us your history and how you got here.
Thank you,
It must be a hellacious time right now with what's going on with your homeland and what's going on.
Oh, that's actually it's my wound. It took me very deeply. Yeah.
I'm sure. Well, we'll carry on the conversation on Monday, Victor. We'll catch up in person then. And right now, from There's a Small Hotel, here's Yesterday's with Paul Bollenbach and Victor doing a duet. Thanks again for calling in.